Festcast, die gesprochene Festschrift für Professor Dr. Constanze Jungblut.
Welcome to the next episode of the Festcast for Professor Constanze Jungblut. I'm very happy, I'm over the moon to have Dr. Natia Dell'Abbate and Dr. Nika Loladze with me in this episode, two academics from Georgia, and it feels as if we've been working together for centuries or decades at least, and we figured out that it has been since 2013 in the chat that we've just had. So Dr. Natia Dell'Abbate is affiliated with the Ivana Javachishvili Tbilisi State University and is currently working on a research project at the Institute of Caucasian Peoples. And Dr. Nika Loladze completed his PhD at Viadrina and Ivana Javachishvili Tbilisi State University and is currently working as head of educational projects at the Windforce Academy. Welcome, both of you.
Hello. I'm very happy to be a part of this podcast, and I think it's a wonderful idea, and it's a pleasure, honor, and I'll try to remember and talk about Constanze and her role in this my academic career as well, and remember all the nice stories and wonderful stories what we had together during our research together in Georgia, Greece, or Germany.
Thank you. I think, let's start with the big question of how you met Constanze, like where, under what circumstances, and sort of what was the general context. Natia, would you like to go first?
Yes, thank you for inviting me. I'm very happy to see you again and to hear your voice.
So am I.
Yes, contact with Constanze was a great pleasure for me and for my colleagues. I can't evaluate her as a linguist because I'm not a linguist. I'm an ethnologist. But I will try to speak and tell you about my impressions about our joint work in the project. Ilia Melikishvili, now already academic of the Georgia National Academy of Sciences, was invited to the project, which was being financed by the Volkswagen Foundation. And the project was called The Impact of Current Transformational Processes on Language and Ethnic Identity, Urum and Pontic Greeks in Georgia, proposed my candidacy to the supervisors of the project. And very soon, she immediately received a positive response. We both were invited in the project as ethnologists, and during 3 years, we were lucky to work together with a team of professionals headed by Constanze Jungblut. She was one of the supervisors of the project. This project studied the influence of transformational processes on the linguistic practice and identity, and it was focused on two communities that was in Georgia and in Greece, Pontic Greeks and Urum Greeks. So we were very happy because it was not so often that researchers from the former Soviet Union had to participate in European projects, and at the same time we were worried because we had no experience of participating in international projects like this, in ethno-linguistic projects. So Constanze Jungblut was there as one of the supervisors of the project. At the same time, she was a mentor, a teacher, a friend, and an advisor. Our first meeting took place in Frankfurt when we were participating in the conference that was organized within the frames of the project. And our meeting with Constanze and Peter Rosenberg was particularly interesting. So I may speak about my impression this. That the impression generally, our first impression is made through a person's appearance. And Constanza captivated us primarily with her elegance. When communicating with her, her intelligence and humor attracted you at first sight. And after that, there were several more conferences in Germany, in Poland, in Georgia, when we had continued our contacts and consultations. So this is my first impression about Constanza and her meeting.
Thank you, Natia. Nika, do you remember how you met Constanza?
Yes, of course. And it's great that we are recording this together with Natia, because she already mentioned all those events. Because I met Constanza in 2013 on the very same conference what Natia already mentioned, and it was thanks to Constanza and Natia, of course, who told me about this project about Pontic Greeks, which become part of my life later as a PhD project. And thanks to this project, I got a chance at first to travel to Germany and attend this conference. And later, I became the member of the project, and also I got the chance to enroll at Viadrina University. And I spent a good 6 years working together with Constanza, and it was very, very influential years, and it changed many of my perspectives about academia, about my own research field, human geography, and all of this would be impossible with Constanza's involvement. She was always encouraging me, and I was a little bit surprised how she was understanding all of those challenges what I had during this project, and especially during the writing process. And her advices and her involvement was, enormous, and it's really hard to describe it with words. And and for the very first meeting, it was in Frankfurt Oder, and it will be really hard for me to describe this meeting in a way like Natia did with these wonderful words. But I do remember our very first conversation where we had walking from Viadrina building to the bridge to Slubice, and we were talking about the borders back then, and it was a most memorable part of the first meeting, and I don't know, that was an experience also for me from the post-Soviet space, and from especially Georgia, where borders and boundaries are harsher, to say so. And experiencing it together with Constanza, who was explaining, and it was the first time I got interested into borders from theoretical approach and from academic approach. And later I also did a postdoctoral research on the topic, and that was quite an influence from Constanza as well.
Wow. So there's everything from shaping an academic trajectory. So would you say then that the topic of borders, for you, Nika, at least, is sort of the biggest overlap or connection between your research and Constanza's research?
Definitely it's the biggest one, but not the only one, because during my research days, and also via internet when we had this, and she was my supervisor, right, for my PhD project, and also for the identity construction as well, when I was working about the Pontic and Urum Greeks in Georgia. Her research interests and research topics were overlapping in that field as well. But if I had to choose, I don't know why, but I would think that this it was the most inspirational to rethink the borders, which I was not paying that much attention and not that deep. I had no deep understanding of it.
How about you, Natia? I mean, I know that you then afterwards went on to have a whole big border project in Georgia.
Yes, we've done this project. We finished. We did our best to make this project be, say, good one. We have published already the book, but this was a bit. The direction of this study was a bit politically oriented. There was no linguistic orientation in this case because we studied the border between occupied former Soviet Ossetia and Georgia. So this was it had quite a different direction. But just now we are working on the south borders, the border between Armenia and Georgia. And so this case is just the case where we can speak about ethnic borders differently from political borders. So the population in South Georgia, namely in Akhalkalaki, in the district, which is populated by the Armenian population much more than Georgians there. So this is the problem between these ethnic and political borders, because Armenian population consider that the territory they live, not all, but politically oriented Armenian population consider that this territory is theirs. So the case is very interesting. We are just going to study this case. And this is just the situation between the difference between political and ethnic borders. And here the factor of language plays a big role. So in case of Armenians. So this is rather interesting because I hope that the experience I gained when working on the German project, is very helpful in this case.
Yeah, I was going to ask, out of personal interest, how you see the relationship between the two projects, so between the project with the focusing on the Greeks in Georgia and now the Armenians in Georgia. I think both about the relationship of the two projects, but then also about these two quite different minorities living in Georgia.
Yes, you see the difference. First, the primary difference is in the location, because Greeks lived and they do not live. Their percent is quite low now, and they knew that it was not Greece, and this was not the territory belongs to Georgia. But Armenians, which live on the borderline, just not border, but in the border zone, and they border Armenia, they think that this territory belongs to them. And the difference is between that the Armenians who live in Armenia, politically oriented Armenians, they try to not damage, but I don't know the word. I don't remember the word. To falsify the history. Falsify the history, and they want to state that this territory belonged to Armenia, and now it is in the territory of Georgia. So it is a quite of political game between these two countries, and better to say it, or politically oriented groups. So this is quite different situation. And the population who lives there, they are speaking Armenian. And the neighboring country, they also speak Armenian. So this is the difference. But Greeks, actually, there are very small number of Greeks in, of course, South region now.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, like bringing it back to sort of Constanze and working with Constanze. Nika, you said that she has been very influential for your academic trajectory and your formation as a PhD student. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. Well, maybe I can start it from very first steps into my academic career. So I'm coming from the background as a human geographer, and when I got involved into this project, I was analyzing and researching the migration processes in Georgia and on particularly about Georgian Greeks. And even though that this is not a primary field of Constanza's work, and she is not a human geographer or migration, she does migration studies. Her advices and supervising was quite important in this process, because I had some challenges, because back then I used to study in Georgia as a PhD student at Tbilisi State University, and that was not helping much, to put it this way. And I was trying to find a solution. Basically, I was struggling with it. And later Constanza understood it, and that's what I meant when I said that I was at some point surprised of her understanding of the challenges, because I think she understood all those challenges better than I did, because I didn't have an experience of working on such a big topic, on a big project, and she understood what kind of support I needed back then. And on the first time she became not an official supervisor, but she was doing all the job of supervising and directing my research. And later she gave me an opportunity to enroll at Viadrina University, and that was whole another level for me. Because I don't know, just simply the standards were different than in Georgia. Language barrier, because I had to write it in English now, and the very first and biggest thing what comes in my head are these standards, and to meet all those criteria for German university. That was very challenging, but again, with her direct involvement, direct help and advices and support, finally I managed to overcome all of this, and which I would never done without her support, and that's for sure. And especially for publishing the book in Germany, that was something I was not even thinking about when I first joined the project, because it was not on my agenda, but later and later, so become more and more real. And again, it was this road way to that achievement was quite hard, but thanks to her expertise, thanks to her support, it's become real at the end. And that's about her involvement. What comes in my head for most important one.
Thank you. I think I was always struck and impressed by sort of her being very strategic and sort of knowing the bureaucracies and who to talk to and who would make.
Oh yes, that's another thing. Sorry, I'm interrupting you, but that's another thing. Like talking about the German bureaucracy at the university, that was something I still don't understand, maybe, but
who does?
I don't know, but that was yet another challenge which I would never overcome without Constanza's help.
Thank you. I mean, for you, Natia.
Yes, I am a witness to how she worried about every work of her doctoral student. Namely, you remember those who were in Tbilisi.
Yes.
Then I want to say that our meetings related to the project showed me how far and multifaceted Constanza comprehended the issue of the relationship between language and identity. And even the emphasis she made while working on this project, when we had some consultations between each other, became a model for my further research. Later in my researches, I focused on the influence of the role of cultural markers. No example, language, religion, tradition, in formation of ethnic identity, and even I have published some works on this topic. And I want to say that thanks to this project, our works, our joint work with Lia Melikishvili, have become very popular in scientific circles in Europe, and not only in Europe. And it is widely viewed on international scientific portals. So I'm very, very thankful to that, because your publications made our works popular. So Constance's role in this direction is rather big. So I'm thankful to that.
Yes, thank you very much. And I think it's important at that moment to also note that, yes, of course, the project and Constance's work within that, sort of to amplify Georgian voices and Georgian academic writing through publications in Western Europe is really important. And at the same time, it is also the quality of your writing, of course, and of your research that made that possible and and successful.
Thank you.
So if you think, and I know that neither of you are linguists or sociolinguists, even though Natia now with the new project, it is some of these things are moving almost into a linguistic direction. If you think about, so the projects that we talked about, and her as a researcher, which we haven't really spoken about because she managed this project and she fantastically well. And as you said, Natia, there was this very strong concern for the Georgian and the German and PhD students, which both Nika and I benefited from quite a lot. What would you say her legacy might be, sort of, for this area of research?
Yes, her legacy is just what I've told you about, that she changed our interests, and this is her legacy. She gave direction to Georgian doctoral students, namely Nika, who became very popular, readable young researcher. So this is her legacy, because she made young generation of scientists in Georgia to choose a concretion. In Nika's case, it is quite evident, because after this project worked in a very important project we fulfilled. And I think that the start has given the drone project, which was supervised by Constanze Jungbluth, gave a start to the direction in Georgia. So it is very important, the legacy, I think.
Yes, certainly.
So it continues in our field.
Yes, so. It does. And in our relationships to how we deal with PhD students or other students. Nika?
For the Constance's legacy, definitely it will be his knowledge, what she shared with me and with us, and this academic network, which she, I would say, in my case, from my perspective, she founded between Georgian scholars as myself, or Natia and Lia and many others, and Viadrina University between Georgian scholars and German scholars, and here we are, the best example of that. This is this podcast, and also again, maybe I'm going back to the influences for what she had on the trajectory of my research interests, but I have a feeling that later, when I become interested into border studies, I think this approach is what I've learned and what I used for my postdoctoral research project was quite new in Georgia, and for Georgian readers, this interdisciplinary approach, and I think that definitely is a legacy in a way for Georgian scholars and readers or students. And I would say about the Greeks as well, that the topic of Georgian Greeks were somehow, well, it was understudied for sure and forgotten even, and it become quite popular in the Georgian academic circles, and not only academic circles, bringing this is not only the memory, but the heritage of Georgian Greeks community in the region, and more knowledge about the region of Kemo-Kartli particularly, and even Achara as well, and about the diversity of Georgia. Many of the readers and no friends or students around me got interested and got more information and knowledge about it, and from different perspectives they started to see, and especially in case of Kemo-Kartli, which I, again, thanks to Natia, was involved in some other projects about swans and migration process, but which is still understudied. But I think, and I notice more and more interest into this region from the students, especially when I was teaching at Caucasus University. More and more students are still approaching me, some of my old students and some of their friends or acquaintances, to share my expertise on this region. So yeah, definitely this is a legacy, and yeah, one of the most precious I would mention again that it is a bridge. I would call it a bridge, or this network between Georgian and German scholars.
And the legacy lives on through your students in a way.
Oh yeah,
which is which is great. I think I've always, once I realized that the way Constanze treats her PhD students is not normal also in Germany. I think what you said earlier, Nika, sort of alludes a little bit to the fact that it's how she behaves in the supervisory relationship is not exactly what you would expect from some Georgian professors, particularly the older ones.
Oh, indeed. Indeed.
And I then found out that after thinking this was normal, that this is also not the case in Germany. And I think what I've always made sure is that I try with my own students to be more like Constanze in the support and the interest and the care that Natia mentioned, that I'm sort of directing towards them. So she's certainly been a role model in this care that she gives to the people that she works with.
For sure, yes.
Great. I think this is all the questions that I had. Are there any things that either of you would like to add?
You see, Concha, I want to add that when I say I recommend someone, I recommend it now. He does not need recommendation. And when I say Nika, I speak about Nika. When I say that, he has defended his doctoral thesis in Frankfurt, in Germany. Oh, in Frankfurt, in Germany. And so he becomes. So,
yes.
And even in you say about Nika that you are at the Institute of Caucasus, or so, like at Caucasus University, how when they saw that you defended in Germany, they said, "Oh, come work with us."
Definitely that achievement again, thanks to Constanze, opened many doors for me, and Yeah, on the Georgian level, on the local level, as for the international level, because later when I did my postdoc in Bucharest, Romania, well, I got this reference recommendation letter from Constanța, and yeah, it was border studies. It was from the same project which me and Natia were working together. Natia invited me to this project on this borderization process in South Ossetia, and yeah, I would like to add that working together with Constanța, knowing her, the end opened many doors for me, and I'll be grateful for that forever. Yeah.
And I'm sure she's very happy that she could be helpful in that way.
Yes, she is really helpful. She was and is really helpful in many things.
Yes, she is. I will turn off the recording soon, but I wanted to say Dzalian Didi Madloba, very many thanks for joining me on this podcast episode. And I will now press stop recording.